With 4 weeks of the NFL season now in the books, as we get ready for week 5, we can now identify trends as something that you can rely on for the rest of season. So in this video, I'm going to be identifying a handful of players that you should be targeting for trades to help bolster up your team. And what makes this video special is we have my good friend Dave Kluge here to help us out to identify the right players that you need to be trading for in your fantasy leagues.
Hey Dave, thank you for joining the show today, man.
Of course, man. Always a good time getting to chop it up with some new people. And you and I, we've talked behind the scenes a little bit before, but first time doing a show together, so it should be a good time.
Yeah, so hopefully I won't show too much of my nerves or too much of my fanboying over here with you on. But I figured, Dave, that we can just kind of do a quick rapid fire of some players. I have some stats for a few of them. You do this in your sleep, so I'm sure it's going to be a lot of value added for those tuning in. But the first one I wanted to go over was going to be, well, actually, no, before we get started, how would you essentially recap what's been happening so far the first 4 weeks of the fantasy football season?
That's a good question, and there's a lot to recap. I think once we get about 4 weeks into the season, that's when I feel like we get enough data points that we don't feel like we're overreacting. You know, week 1, right, crazy stuff happens all the time. I think back to last year, Isaiah Likely, like this huge game in week 1, everybody overreacts, and it didn't. Like, it was week 10 that people realized, wait, Isaiah Likely's not doing anything, and like they held on to him for 9 weeks after that. Where I think, you know, we get these big overreactions, but 4 weeks in, we start to get enough data points that we can identify some trends here. And I think if somebody's consistently doing something for 4 straight weeks, we don't necessarily have to say that this is a guy you need to get off your rosters. Like, sometimes we just get surprised, and a quarter of the way through the season, we can start to separate what's real from what's fake.
That's right. And you know what? These guys that I'm going to actually mention fit that category so well because it's so easy after a few weeks to have some kind of reluctance, but after a while, you just got to say, okay, this is now a trend that we can now rely on. And that first player is going to be Javonte Williams. And I got to be honest with you, Dave, this is someone that I was looking to fade away because of the uncertainty with the offense, with the running back room. You have Miles Sanders, and you even have that realization, hey, Javonte isn't as old as we think he is. He's just been plagued with injuries. How would you, I guess, now reconcile the fact that this is someone that has been for 4 weeks now very solid for fantasy?
Yeah, and I think this was a huge miss for me as well, just like the mercurial nature of the Dallas running back room in the offseason. You know, we always get so blinded by the rookie, and we see Jaden Blue, this guy with off-the-charts size-adjusted speed. We thought that he'd come in there and take the role. Right. Miles Sanders had his time in Philadelphia. We thought he could do something as well. And I very much so just kind of chalked Javonte Williams up as this old, injured running back because that's what he's been for the last couple of years. And then, like you said, the age, like still just 25 years old. Right. But I think the reason that I'm looking at Javonte Williams and thinking that like this is real and this is something that can stick is the efficiency numbers that I care about. Yards after contact per attempt and missed tackles forced per attempt. That's what made Javonte Williams such an exciting prospect during his first year and a half when he was with Denver. He had some of the best yards after contact and some of the most broken tackles of any running back. And then, of course, he had that knee injury, and his those metrics plummeted. He was averaging over 1 yard after contact per attempt less than he did during his last 2 years than he did in his first 2 years. But now all of those efficiency metrics have rebounded back to his pre-injury self. So when you look at that injury, it wasn't just a normal, knee injury. It was ACL, MCL, LCL, meniscus, hamstring, everything was torn there. So yeah, it took a little over 2 years for him to heal, but still on the right side of the age curve, a part of a good offense, very little touch competition. I'm looking at Javonte Williams as the real deal. Now, if you're able to tear up from Javonte Williams and get, a Kyron Williams or Bucky Irving or an Ashton Jinty or an Omarion Hampton, like one of these guys that we know is rock solid, I think you could do that. But I think people that are thinking maybe flipping him for like a DeAndre Swift or a Kenneth Walker, some of these underperforming RB2s, I wouldn't do that. At this point, I like Javonte more than I like those guys.
Wow, it's so crazy considering that, I was looking at his ADP. He was running back, it looks like you're 100 and something. He was deep in there, but the guys that he was drafted, it was 108. And you see guys, Aaron Jones, 67, Tyrone Tracy, 75th overall, Caleb Johnson, guys that are absolutely no factor whatsoever. And I love that you got into those efficiency metrics because you're also seeing the value that he's able to provide even as a pass catcher. I mean, here, RB6 in receptions, RB7 in targets, RB8 in yards created and yards per touch. So you're seeing the ability to create after, of course, getting that initial touch. And with now CeeDee Lamb hurt, I mean, it sounds like this is someone that we can now rely on, being that, of course, the opportunities are going to be there for him in Dallas.
Yeah, and also Miles Sanders dealing with an injury right now. There was I don't know if you saw the story going on with Jaden Blue this week, that they brought him back. He's been at practice, but he hasn't been active on game day. And now with Miles Sanders injured, they were expecting a bigger role for Jaden Blue. And what does he do? He comes out to practice wearing Louis Vuitton cleats that were soccer cleats and ended up with blisters on his feet. And now they're saying that he's probably going to be unable to play. So just shows the immaturity from this young rookie right here, where Javonte, he's a consummate pro. He's doing all the stuff that they want to see. I have no concerns that he's going to lose this job. It sounds like it's his to stay.
Man, that's so crazy. So, okay, another player I actually wanted to get into now is going to be Quinnon Judkins. Now, this is someone, Dave, that we can both agree came in with so many question marks. Is he going to get that contract? Is it going to be Dylan Sampson? You still have Jerome Ford in the mix, but he's been off the charts now for 3 straight weeks. I mean, you're seeing his touches go up. You're seeing 13 in that first debut. Then he had 19. Then he had 25 this past week. I mean, safe to say that this is someone that we can now say, okay, he's secured this position here with Cleveland, right?
Right, and this guy, like, had he not had the contract and the legal issues leading up to the season, he probably would have been like a 3rd-round pick going in the same area as Amari Hampton and some of these other guys. I mean, we saw Nick Chubb leave Cleveland, and the expectation was that Quinnon Judkins would get dropped into that role, and that's exactly what happened. So we were able to get this huge discount on him because of the off-the-field stuff. But for me, every single week I do my rest of season rankings, and it was after that first game, he only had a handful of touches, but one of them was this 39-yard rushing attempt where he was breaking tackles left and right, running through defenders, making yards after the catch, all the things I wanted to see. And that was enough for me because Jerome Ford doesn't do that and Dylan Sampson doesn't do that. He is just tiers better than all of the other running backs there in Cleveland. So I shot him way up my rankings after that. And this is one that I also think is here to stay. I mean, this is a guy who handled a huge workload when he was at Ohio State, drafted early in round 2. I actually prefer him ahead of Javonte Williams by just one spot, but I have both of those guys ranked side by side in my rest of season rankings. So again, kind of the same advice here. Like, if you can capitalize on what he's been doing lately and swap him out for a Bucky Irving or an Ashton Jeanty, I'd do that, but I'm not trying to sell low here. 79 rushing yards per game. That's 4th best in the league right now, behind just Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, and Travis Etienne. And sure, it's been a small sample size, but this guy's here to stay. He's a good running back, just like Javonte Williams, and has no competition for touches.
Hey, we have a few more players to go over, but before we do so, listen, we are so close to the 1,000 subscriber goal, so if you could do me a solid, most of you that aren't already watching aren't even subbed, so do me a favor, if you're getting value, hit the like button as well as the subscribe button. Let's go over these last few players.
And it's so funny, Dave, I promised you that, for those that are viewing, we didn't share notes because you just mentioned someone that I'm actually going to mention next. That's going to be Travis Etienne, someone that, again, very similar, right? You have this new rookie coming in with, there with Tootin, then you have Tank Bigsby. What's going to happen there? But then you find out, okay, they trade Bigsby over to Philadelphia. Tutton hasn't really gotten much of work within this backfield, but then you see Travis Etienne, someone that was already proven to be successful within this system. Granted, of course, different coaching staff, but you're still seeing some kind of success there, especially for fantasy. How are you now reconciling the fact that Travis Etienne was basically this huge afterthought all offseason and now absolutely just blossoming?
And all of these guys that we're talking about, Javonte Williams, Quinnon Judkins, now Travis Etienne, all of them were in these very murky backfields. And I think that the main takeaway here is that you want to attack these backfields with confidence in your draft, even if you are wrong. Like, maybe you did draft Miles Sanders, or maybe you did draft Bashaw Tootin. And, I'm not saying Bashaw Tootin's story's not over yet. Like, he could still emerge as the season goes on. But I think it just goes to show that, like, you don't need to hit on 100% of these. If you take shots on these murky backfields, and you just hit 1 in 3 or 1 in 4, you can really find gold there. And Clayton Gray, our general manager over at Football Guys, he does this all the time. And he's the one that kind of like showed me this blueprint. And he says the best thing is, like, you don't need to be right all the time. You just hit on a couple of them and you've got these starters that you got for really cheap in your draft. So Travis Etienne is another one. I think that he's going to retain the role. I think Tootin has already come on and looked good, and maybe we could see a little bit of a split there. But I do have him behind the other two guys that we talked about, Javonte Williams and Quinnon Judkins, just because there is a little bit more competition there. Bashaw Tootin, off the charts, size adjusted speed, an early 4th round pick who should work his way in there. LaQuint Allen is running a ton of routes that could cap the upside there as well. And we've also seen that Liam Cohen, the head coach in Jacksonville, is willing to take a hot hand approach when it comes to who he's going to give touches to. So I have all of these guys super close in my rest of season rankings, but the way I've got it would be Quinnon Judkins, Javonte Williams, and then Travis Etienne right under.
There we go. And you know what? Speaking of guys that are just now coming into the scene, I can't think of a better story for Quentin Johnston. I mean, this is someone that we wrote off. I mean, I know that I did, at least going into this offseason, of someone that was looking to fade because you figured, okay, Ladd McConkey is now going to establish himself as this wide receiver one for Los Angeles. Plus you have Quinton Allen. How are they going to compete with those touches? And not that this is about Ladd McConkey completely being phased out, but Quentin Johnston has been a phenomenal piece for Los Angeles. And I was even reading this too. I didn't realize that he, so far for the year, he's had the first read targets. He's had 34 of them already in the season, and he had all of 67 last year and only 43 that rookie year. And I just want to ask you, as someone who's been in this game for a while now, what's been working for Quentin Johnston, and why is this happening now in year 3 compared to those first 2 years where he was basically not really a factor?
Well, he was a very developmental guy when he came in. And, if anybody really wants to really read my deep thoughts on Quentin Johnston, I just wrote a big article on Quentin Johnston. It's my pinned tweet right now on Twitter. I wrote about 2,000 words just on kind of the narrative that has been surrounding Quentin Johnston since he came into the league. But this guy, when he was at TCU, he was very reliant on manufactured touches. He wasn't just out there beating guys with good route running. It was a lot of screens and slants and jet sweeps to get him the ball in space because he was the biggest, strongest, fastest guy on the field. Now, we see that archetype of wide receiver doesn't always translate to the pros. I mean, anybody watching the show probably knows Jonathan Mingo and Traylon Burks, and there are a lot of busts that fit this biggest, strongest, fastest guy in college that comes into the NFL, and suddenly you're not the biggest, fastest, or strongest. So it takes a lot of work and a lot of determination to really shore up the technical aspects of being a wide receiver. And that's what we saw is after year 1, I think people were so quick to just put a nail in his coffin and say Quentin Johnston was a bust. I told you so. These guys never pan out. And then in year 2, we saw him start to develop. He became much more dynamic with his movements, improved from 2 touchdowns to 8 touchdowns, and still people just wrote it off as a fluke. And they said, yeah, busted coverage, whatever. Ladd McConkey's there opening up opportunities for him. But now in year 3, we are seeing a polished and a very good wide receiver, drawing coverage from Pat Surtain, the best coverage back in the NFL, and he was able to consistently beat him in that week 3 game. Last week, we saw him run this nice little stutter go route, make a contested catch over a safety. He's putting it together. Now he is a good route runner. He still has the athletic traits that made him such a desirable prospect, and I think everybody should have just exercised a little bit more patience. These year 3 breakouts aren't uncommon, and I think what we're seeing from Quentin Johnston is legit. I think he is here to stay. And I think, we're going to see a lot of different boom bust games from these Chargers wide receivers. But I think Quentin Johnston could easily finish the year as a top 15 receiver.
That's so crazy considering that we had all these high hopes with Ladd McConkey. And you know what? I still have some kind of reluctance with maybe someone like Quinton Allen, only because of the age as well as the history with his injuries. But how would you, as a fantasy manager, basically rank these guys rest of season? I'm assuming Quentin Johnston, then you have Ladd McConkey, then you have Quinton Allen, or do we expect that Ladd McConkey would turn the page, or what are you gauging when it comes to this wide receiver room?
So I technically do have Quinton Allen ahead of Ladd McConkey, but just by a smidge. All of these guys are inside my top 24, and schematically, they work together so well. I mean, if I could just draw up a wide receiver trio in a lab, it would look exactly like what they've got in Los Angeles. You've got the handy vet that can play out of the slot and basically wins his routes by fist fighting defensive backs. That's what Quinton Allen does, and he's got that unconscious chemistry with Justin Herbert where he can work on those underneath routes. You've got Quentin Johnston who can make plays after the catch and also has the speed to get behind defenses. And then Ladd McConkey, it almost feels like his versatility, which is one of his best traits, is what is negatively impacting him right now because of his ability to line up in every single position, because of his ability to win deep and short and inside and outside. They're kind of using him as this player that they can move around all over the place so that it can open up opportunities for the other guys. I do think that if you're in a fantasy league right now, you can go out and get Ladd McConkey for cheap. It's only a matter of time before he has a boom game. But I'm not trying to sell high on Quentin Johnston or Quinton Allen either. I think that Justin Herbert in this offense could easily pass for 5,000 yards, and that can make 3 viable pass catchers come from this offense. So I think Quentin Johnston's here to stay. I think what we're seeing from Quinton Allen isn't a fluke, and I do expect Ladd McConkey to bounce back from the slow start we've seen through the first 4 weeks.
And I'm so glad that you actually led that way, because I have a few players that I'm targeting as buy low candidates. And of course, this is all very dependent on where you're at with your team. If you're, of course, 0-4, then you're probably in a very disparate situation to make some moves. But if you're looking for some buy low candidates and you're a pretty strong, contender already in your league, I'm targeting those Ladd McConkeys, and I'm even targeting maybe Chase Brown, who I know has had a very rough slate. I know the schedule hasn't been favorable, but who are some guys that you're looking at that buy low price that could have that boom end of season as we're going through the year?
I think Chase Brown, the real move with him is to wait one more week, because it's been brutal the last couple of weeks. He had to face against Minnesota and I'm forgetting the other tough matchup they had, Denver last week. And then this week he gets to face off against Detroit, which is another very tough matchup. So I think if you can hold out for one more week, I'm not expecting a big game from Chase Brown. The schedule opens up after this week, and I think that he makes for a great buy low candidate. The opportunity share has been there, almost over 90% of the touches, is third best among running backs. Some other potential buy low candidates, Rashee Rice right now I think is the obvious one. A lot of people drafted him high in round 4, 5, 6 of their fantasy drafts, and might have gotten into a slow start out of the gate. So you can get him now for a little bit cheaper than his draft day price. And then Chris Olave is another one. He finally got in the end zone last week, which might bump his price up a little bit, but this is a guy who has been drawing a ton of targets, and it's been terrible right now from Spencer Rattler. Like, it has just not been on target throws, but at some point they're going to either make a switch to Tyler Shugg or bring in a veteran, and I think that could help Chris Olave. And the last one I'd mention would be DeAndre Swift, another guy who, much like the guys we opened up the show talking about, doesn't really have any competition in the backfield. Kyle Monangai is a fun guy, but 7th round rookie, we're not expecting a ton from him. DeAndre Swift has been handling all of the backfield touches here. The Chicago offense is trending up. Just one touchdown in the year, hasn't had a lot of breakaway runs, but when he's getting fed that sort of volume on an offense trending up, I feel like it's only a matter of time before we see DeAndre Swift really take off.
That's some good stuff there, Dave. You know what, Dave? Thank you so much once again, man, for being part of this video. It really means the world to us. And hey, guys, if you want to go ahead and dive into some deeper, some really next level stuff, I really encourage you to follow Dave. He is worth a good follow on X, and also check out that article as well. I promise you, I did not know that you had that 2,000 word article on Quentin Johnston. I probably shouldn't have even said that, so it sounds like I did know, but
that's why you brought it up. Exactly. Yeah. Well prepared.
Exactly. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Hey, you made it to the very end of the video. Thank you for watching. If you got value in this video, do me a solid. We are inching close to the 1,000 subscriber milestone, so be sure to hit the like button as well as the subscribe button if you're getting value, and tune into some of these other videos here that'll help you out. Best of luck to you in week 5, and we'll see you next week for our waiver wire video. In the meantime, take care. God bless. Peace.